IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And today with us in conversation, we have Lakshmi from Slay Coffee. We've discussed coffee in the earlier episode, part 1. In case you haven't seen that, go and check it out now because we talk about how you can start thinking about coffee and your journey towards it. And like I keep saying, for many of us, coffee is a habit. How can we make coffee move from just being a habit to a hobby? Something that we can get more excited about, we can get more particular about, and we can start growing and changing the way that we think about coffee and drink coffee. So listen to episode 1 if you haven't already. This is episode 2, and we deep dive into understanding coffee and coffee addictions. Things are like caffeine. How can we make coffee a little bit more palatable on our stomach? So let's jump into the episode. We should be talking about what we talked about, coffee, because that I think is so important. So we were talking about, moving away from vending machine coffees. Like you said, be a little bit more particular, order a good cup of coffee from, companies like yourself that are starting these off. And I think you're making it more accessible to all of us in that way, right? What are the things that you would talk about as cautions when it comes to coffee? How do you understand your caffeine threshold? Things that people are typically worried about. Should you have coffee in the morning? Should you not have coffee in the morning? When is the last cup of coffee, according to you, that we should have? What are your thoughts on all of this?
So coffee, it's very interesting because there are these terms around coffee addiction and coffee OD, how much coffee is good for you, how much coffee is not good for you. And there are two sides of the spectrum. The first side is knowing yourself. It starts with acknowledging that every individual is different. What works for me may not work for you. Whether it is the amount I consume, what I consume, when I consume it. If I have my coffee in the evening, will I be able to sleep in the night or not? So it's extremely individual. So looking inwards and knowing what coffee does to you is the first step. And the second...
And I want to add something here because this is so important in my family as well. So my dad's the kind that can have a espresso at night after his dinner and sleep and he claims that he sleeps perfectly fine. And if I had an espresso after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I'd be wide awake. So on days that I have to stay wide awake, I probably do that if I have to go for a wedding or something like that. But apart from that, would never touch coffee post 4 is my way of looking at it, because I figured out that is where my coffee threshold or caffeine threshold is.
Right. So looking inwards, right, and acknowledging the fact that what is working, to your point, within the same family, what works for your dad doesn't work for you. What works for you may not work for someone else. So knowing that is very, very important. And it's not just for coffee, but for anything that you want to consume in life.
Correct.
Right. And then beyond that, there is a lot of research that talks about how many cups are good enough. There are health benefits that are attributed to coffee. There are research studies. There was
Can you talk about a few of the health benefits? I know about the liver benefits. Anything else that we can talk about?
Very recently there was a study that spoke about the benefits to the liver. But in general, because caffeine boosts your metabolism. So again, in moderation, if you consume coffee, experts say that it can help you in weight management. It just gives you a better metabolism, but of course not in isolation. It has to be done along with a couple of other things. It wakes up your nervous system. So that's the reason why a lot of people prefer having coffee as the first thing in the morning, because it just, sends those signals to your nervous system that, hey, it's time to wake up and let's be alert. And that, I think, is the biggest benefit that coffee does to your system, and which is why people going towards, I need my coffee to function, right? And that's when it starts becoming a little harmful for the individual. But so long as you know that I need my coffee to stay focused, like you were saying at the beginning of the show, then you're perfectly fine and dandy. And experts and doctors are now saying that it's completely all right to have up to 2 to 3 cups. Now, whether it's 2, 3, 1, depends on what is good for you.
So let's break this down a little bit. So for me, what I do with regards to weight loss, fat loss, and all of those things with coffee is my morning coffee is that. So what I do is my morning coffee, I brew it and I put cinnamon inside. What it does is basically it helps regulate your blood sugar to a certain extent. And coffee is a fat mobilizer as well. So this helps, fat get into your system and your body use it, especially because I fast most of the morning and I eat around 12, 1-ish. So this helps me, at least boost that aspect of, fat loss, weight loss a little bit. And obviously, there's a lot of research that needs to be done on this. But these are little aspects that you pick up from here and there and you try and see what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has to be done as a holistic part of a larger program or a larger lifestyle change that you're bringing about. In your case, like you said, it's coffee plus fasting plus, working out. But where the problem arises is people just think, "Arey, coffee peene se weight loss ho jayega," right? And then you go down that path, which may not be helpful.
No, that's not the way to think about it. It's one of the tools that is there that you can use, but it's an overall change that you need for getting the fat loss in, like I said, with the fasting and all the other aspects that go with it. And, in fact, this morning cup, Lakshmi, when people talk about, oh, I can't have coffee in the morning, gives me acidity, or I can't have my chai in the morning, gives me acidity. What we don't realize is that it's not the coffee that's giving the acidity, it's the milk that you put inside your coffee or you put inside your tea. Because, if you have just a plain green tea or a black tea or a black coffee, the same effect doesn't take place. Just avoid the sugar altogether, because your body doesn't have to start its digestive juices to start processing it out of your system. So try that out for people who are stuck in this mindset of, I get acidity or jalan hoti hai after I have it. Try this and see if it makes a difference without milk, without sugar, and tell me, what your thoughts are on that as well.
And also, I've seen this in my experience and a couple of Ayurveda courses that we have done in the past, that even if you drink it on an empty stomach, so let's say you have a small cookie or you have a handful of almonds or whatever else is your morning routine. So just don't make coffee the first thing that enters your system in the morning. If at all you have issues with acidity and others, let there be something else in your body, and then try having the cup of coffee or the chai, and that could also help.
Lovely. What about towards the end of the day? When do you suggest having the last cup? Any thoughts on that? Or again, you believe it's very, very personal? When is your last cup?
My first and last cup is in the morning.
Okay. So you're one coffee person?
I'm a one coffee person.
I drink 3 times yours.
So my one cup of coffee, and it's not just the coffee for me. So my ritual, the habit and the ritual around it is.
Tell me about your ritual. What do you do with your coffee in the morning?
So my first cup of coffee is typically what I brew at home myself. And then I sit down and read my newspaper with my son, who, since he was 3 years old, we would sit together for 10 minutes before he went to school, and we would read the newspaper together.
And guys, Lakshmi's son is 9 years old and has his own podcast. Okay. And he's got 56 episodes of a podcast. So all of you who decided to start a podcast during the lockdown and got 1 or 2 episodes in, please learn from her son. Okay. 56 episodes. Fantastic. Lakshmi, I think like full clap. What's his name? Tell us what's the name of the podcast so people can also check it out and support him.
His name is Samad. And his podcast is called Kidacity. So kid in a city, Kidacity. And, like we were talking at the beginning of the show, he just started it out as a lockdown project. It's a multi-segment format, 8 to 10 minutes, book reviews, or talking about what great shows that kids can watch on television.
That's too cute. I love it. I'm so happy he's doing this. Okay, sorry, coming back to your morning ritual. So you sit down with him, have your newspaper, have your first cup of coffee.
Yeah, first cup of coffee. And those 10 minutes that I spend with him, and before Samad came into our lives, the 10 minutes that you would just spend with yourself, the seclusion, inward looking, what yoga sometimes teaches you. So another project that my husband and I completed during the lockdown was getting certified as yoga teachers.
Wow.
So the 10 minutes of looking inwards, right, when the world around you is still not woken up, I think that kind of sets the momentum for the day for me.
For me, and especially as a habit coach, I keep talking about how you should be doing what I call habit stacks, right? Which is while you're doing one habit, you can do another as well at the same time.
Right.
So for me, it was my coffee and gratitude journaling. So the way that I used to do it was while my coffee was brewing in the French press and bubbling away and all of that, I would be writing my gratitude journal. When I poured out my coffee into my mug and while it was cooling down before I could drink it, I would do my breathing exercises, right? So in that way, I had made coffee an integral part of my morning routine. And it was so interesting to see that. And I remember doing a YouTube video on where I was talking about morning routines and coffee, and somebody said, "What can you do along with your coffee?" Everything is doing with his coffee. So it's like, that's the way to think about it, because you can make coffee a special time instead of just thinking about coffee as, that shot of caffeine that you need. Don't talk to me till I have my coffee. I think there's a lot more that you can do and have a healthier relationship with coffee than the one that we have now.
Right. In fact, a lot of our customers, they tell us this, that coffee is that silent companion whether you're journaling, whether you're just sitting with yourself, sometimes you don't want a companion that is talking back to you. You just want a little bit of warmth, a little bit of, a warm, fuzzy feeling. And you just know that this companion is with me. And that's the emotional relationship, healthy emotional relationship that a lot of people have with coffee. And which is even when we speak to people around, they say, hey, coffee is not just, you're not drinking it just because it's coffee and it's a great product. We're drinking it because we can't explain the relationship that we have with the beverage and support or emotional warmth we get out of it.
So coffee is that silent companion. I love thinking about it that way. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side.
Working Monday to Friday glued to your chair making you feel dull? Worry not. Get your 5-minute weekly dose of travel around the world with postcards from nowhere. Join me every Thursday as I explore the strange, obscure, and fascinating parts of the world and bring out facets of travel you may not have thought of before. You can find us on the IBM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Welcome back. All right, let's jump into the conversation. When we think about coffee and the way that India is moving, especially because you're so close to this industry, what are you seeing as the trends moving forward? Like, where do you think coffee is headed?
So firstly, like I said earlier, we're still way behind when it comes to the global consumption average of coffee. The Scandinavian countries are drinking 4 cups a day. We're still drinking about 16 to 20 cups a year. So there's a lot of gap to be covered. And
Ashdin, Lakshmi, you're also adding to that statistic. Huh?
I
Please
know,
increase the number of coffees that you're drinking.
I have to increase. But I think the urban population is contributing to the positive side of this trend. So 70% of urban India who's exposed to global cultures, for whom coffee has been a part of their growing up. So the young millennials and the Gen Zs, for them, coffee has always been a part of their life. They've grown up going to a cafe. Cafe was not like this new thing that they suddenly realized that existed. So coffee, and a lot of them start off their day with coffee. They know what it tastes like. They're a part of the statistic that actually they order from outside. So, statistics wise, the industry is poised to grow at around 6 to 10% year on year. And it's just the beginning of the coffee revolution in the country.
Nice. So you're seeing that coffee is definitely going to pick up in that way. Any particular kind of coffee that you're seeing? Like, for example, right now, it's especially from your stores, etc. What kind of coffee is the one that Indians are consuming the most of?
A lot of cold coffee. India as a country, except for a couple of months in a few states, it's still a very, tropical, temperate climate. So a lot of
milky cold coffee.
We're also seeing a lot of people experiment with strong brews. When I say strong brew, like strong coffee is a big theme. When we do product development, we do a lot of research on what are the themes, what are flavors, what is the kind of coffee that our customers are looking for, and strength of the coffee, which means that, I take a sip and I just wake up. So it's the strength of the coffee that's coming up as a very, very big theme. And we also see a lot of movement towards this. How fresh is my coffee?
Okay.
And fresh, not as to when it was made, but when were the beans roasted? Companies are getting into blockchain. We also do that. We have a blockchain where you can trace when the coffee was actually, when it was roasted, when it was packed. So a lot of awareness even about
and the customer can actually see this?
They can see it. So you just scan it and you know how fresh the coffee is. And this is also coming from the customer demand.
How much of a difference do you think the fresh coffee makes towards a slightly less fresh coffee?
A world of difference. So world of difference, if you grind the coffee right before you make it, the flavor, the aroma, the profile of the coffee is very different. If you're using coffee powder that has been sitting in a packet for say a month or 2 months, it ages, right? It loses its flavor, it loses its aroma. So the caffeine content more or less stays intact, but everything else about the coffee deteriorates as the time goes by.
Yeah. And I think there's a dramatic difference between, this thing about flavor. Many people who are, at least especially people that I talk to, friends, when I talk about coffee and they look at me quizzically saying, why can you talk about different kinds of coffee? Matlab, coffee is coffee. And you're like, no, the taste changes. And people aren't used to the fact that coffee can have a taste or flavor, right? It is just dark and bitter is what most think.
Right. Yeah.
Till you start learning that there are different ways of brewing it, that you can start appreciating different notes in the coffee and actually make it a thing instead of just, for strength.
Yeah.
Right? Can you tell us a little bit about the beans and what are the kinds of beans that exist? And, let's geek out a little bit on that aspect.
So there are two major types of beans, right? One is the Arabicas, and the second is the Robustas. Now, Arabicas are typically the beans that give more flavor to the coffee, and Robustas are the ones that bring in more body. And in India, we grow both. Karnataka, where we're based out of, the whole Chikmagaluru region, is one of the largest contributors to the global Arabica production. And similarly, even global Robusta production, India is one of the largest exporters of coffee. So these are the two major, types of beans. And chicory is not a coffee bean. Chicory is actually the extract of a root, and it is extremely popular in South Indian filter coffees. Again, it lends a certain body to the coffee, a certain flavor profile to the coffee, which is, very preferred down south. But chicory itself is not a coffee bean.
I used to love having the chicory coffee for the flavor because, every time I used to land in Chennai, the first thing I used to do was go and have my filter coffee. That was just like the set thing. Saravana Bhavan filter coffee was just like the set because I used to stay right next to it. And as a result, that taste of the chicory had come in. Chicory also has a good thing for your gut, but that is a separate conversation altogether.
Correct. So chicory again,
so it helps your gut bacteria.
Correct. It like you rightly said, it has a very, very distinct flavor profile. And if the South Indian filter coffee doesn't have chicory, then a lot of people don't call it coffee as well.
Correct. They complain about it. And chicory was originally put as a bulker to cut down on the amount of coffee that would actually be used in coffee, and then it became the thing and what we actually enjoy with regards to the flavor. It's quite cool.
But again, people are becoming more aware of what percentage of chicory goes into the coffee. Again, the trend of looking at the back of the label, so people question when they look at a packed coffee, whether it's 70-30 chicory or 80-20 chicory, 90-10 chicory. So that awareness is also coming in.
Yeah. I remember 10-15 years ago, before coffee was a big thing in Bombay, especially. I think we had one place that would sell, coffee beans. I think it was called Phillips Coffee. That used to be at Matunga and various places. And but down south, there were so many shops that had coffee that was being sold. And I remember this one day I was walking past this store and I was just hit by the smell of coffee, and it dragged me in. And out there, for the first time, I saw people selling, coffee beans. And then there was also an entire packet of chicory. So then you told the person, I want this much of this percentage of this bean, this much of this bean, and this much coffee. And he would freshly make it for you and give it to you in a packet. And I found all of that so cool.
Mom and pop stores, not more than 50 to 100 square feet, like you rightly said. So the whole concept of getting freshly ground coffee, and that lending itself to the flavor of the South Indian filter coffee has been around for ages down south. It's also because, in Karnataka and parts of Tamil Nadu, they actually cultivate coffee. So the culture existed long before it creeped up to the west and up north.
So do you have different kinds of blends as well in Slay Coffee, like different kinds of profiles of coffee?
Yeah, so we major blends, as we call them. The first is our signature blend, which is 100% pure high-grade Arabica coffee. The second is...
Arabica is the flavorful one.
Arabica is the flavorful, more expensive coffee. And the second is what we claim as India's strongest coffee, which is made with 100% Robustas.
Oh, God. Huh.
The Robustas have a bad rep, again. People... it's largely believed that Robustas are also used to kind of bulk up the amount of Arabica beans in the coffee and reduce the price point and all of that. But Robustas are beautiful coffee beans in themselves. So we worked on this blend. It's a proprietary blend, which has more caffeine than leading energy drinks that are out there in the market.
Okay.
At the same time, like cold brew, highly palatable. So it's very smooth. And it's coming out of the need for our customers that told us that, hey, you know what? I want my coffee strong. So we said, okay, let's give you the strongest coffee that's out there. And the third is a blend of Arabica and Robusta, which is what we call the Madras mud. There's no chicory in it. But the flavor profile of the Robusta has been used creatively to go as close as possible to the South Indian filter coffee.
Okay, interesting. And what do you think is the best way for people to experience your brand? How should people, should people order in? Should people buy? Like, what do you think should be the next step for people to experience a good cup of coffee?
So for us at Slay, our mantra is very simple, that you don't have to go to a good cup of coffee. The coffee will come to you.
Oh, wow.
So I would say order at home. And it's not just the coffee, but we worked a lot on the packaging as well. So the coffee travels at the right temperature. It doesn't spill, it doesn't leak, it retains the aroma by the time it reaches you. So the best way for you to experience a sleigh right now would be to order online. We're in almost 15 cities as we speak.
So which cities are you in? Can you rattle them off?
All the major metros. So Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, Chandigarh, Jaipur, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Vizag, Coimbatore, Surat, Nagpur. Yeah, I think that's
I'm not
what.
Counting, but
very soon in Srinagar as well, if all goes well.
Fantastic. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. So basically, if you're at home right now listening to in one of these cities, just you can get on the phone and order yourself a cup of fantastic coffee. I think that's a damn good idea.
Absolutely.
Lovely. How can people stay in touch with you? How can people ask you questions, follow what you guys are doing, and be a part of the journey that you're on?
We're pretty active on social media. So both on Twitter and Instagram. Drink Slay Coffee is the handle. Okay. Where you can reach out to all of us. Our team is pretty active there. And for me, if you want to reach out to me personally, then, I'm not that much on Twitter, but I leave my Twitter handle as well with you guys.
Okay, lovely. Do you all do coffee workshops and things like that? Are you all doing any of those kinds of things as well?
Yes, we do, but mostly online.
Okay.
So again, looking at how do we democratize coffee? So how do we make education democratic as well? We conduct a lot of online workshops, something that were very popular during the pandemic. We are starting them again. Slay.coffee is our website. So you can keep checking our latest coffee workshops on the website, also on the social media.
Lovely. Lakshmi, thank you so much for coming on the Habit Coach podcast and having this chat with us.
Thank you, Ashdin. It was lovely speaking with you and talking about what we love. Both of us love equally, coffee.
Yay! And you have to start having more coffee, okay?
Yes, of course. Cultivate good habits.
Cultivate good habits. Lovely. All right. So start these habits and share with us your progress using the hashtag #TheHabitCoach. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com. or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME 180. That's Awesome 180.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Habit Coach, Ashdin talks to Garima Pandey. She is the co-founder of Wandering Jane. They discuss solo travel and how it's perceived. Does the story of a fake lawyer on the run sound interesting to you? Then definitely tune into Misconduct. Raghavi and Nisha discuss the story of Ceci Xavier. On KBCD, Farad and Sunitru discuss how sometimes people don't feel inclined towards sex, some possible causes, and how it's okay to feel so occasionally. On Press Decode, Sarah and Prafula are joined by author and journalist Sandeep Roy. They discuss the no stags policy that many bars and restaurants follow across the country. Do check out Hanswani, the story Tirthan talks to us about the aspiration and challenges of widowed women. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, go check out our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, to get a list of all of our YouTube channels. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, HDFC Mutual Fund, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Don't you think that if everyone around you is getting smart, you better be smarter? Hey there, I'm the traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh, and I'm back with season 2 of my podcast to make you smarter. Smarter with Sid. What's this season's focus about? Well, it's about 10-minute nuggets that will make you stand out at work. It's time to go from smart to smarter. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and become smarter with Sid.